Happy Wednesday. I am Sam Hayes, and this is Why with One Stop. We're going to talk today about solar in the RLA and the RPA. Where to the who, what, when regarding solar documentation, transfers, where to find the information, and all of that fun stuff. Let's see. All my screens decided to move around on me like they do every single time. Goodness gracious. So I'm Sam Hayes. I've been doing this for about 22 years. I've been doing Zoom for five, but you couldn't tell by the way I use it. And I love this stuff. I am a risk management focused TC, CAR certified transaction coordinator, certified forms trainer, realtor, notary, and all around just car forms nerd. I love it all so much. I like to share my mission statement before I start so you know why I'm putting on these videos. I see my job is to create a defendable, risk management focused, and well documented file in compliance with DRE, broker, and statutory requirements. Through the services I offer, I provide additional bandwidth to the independent brokers and agents. I assist by freeing up their time, energy to focus on pursuing their business generation goals. I'm here because I believe in everybody's dreams and getting to do what you want to do. So let's get talking about solar because I know it's been making me crazy on several of my files. I'm not sure what all you've run into. Everything starts with the listing. It really starts when you go to take that listing, have that very first appointment. You need to be going over this portion of the listing agreement and talking to your sellers. What's going to be included? What's going to be excluded? Are they having the panels taken off the roof before they go? I understand that sounds random, but you know what? It could happen. Is it leased? And we're not just talking about solar. There's so many other things as you can see here through the whole section of D3. But what's leased? And if it's leased, we need to get those contact information. We need to start having the conversation with the sellers regarding how do we contact the solar company, find out what to start with the transfer. If you've already previously set up your escrow, you're going to want to get escrow looped in. Let's get all that legwork out of the way as early as possible. The more we can do this, the more we're going to be able to go ahead and get set up so that by the time you are going into escrow, everything's ready to go and it's going to smooth things out. I know I've run into a few timelines where even Tesla has done some of the things afterwards, Sunrun with the bankruptcy. You got to make sure we know what's going on, so you're going to want to start the conversations. Is it a liened item? Is it a hero loan? Do they have a lien on the property they have to pay off? Is somebody going to assume that loan? Is it assumable? You don't know till you start looking at those solar contracts, starting the conversation, and getting yourself looped in with the different transfer and sales departments that are in the solar companies. They're used to doing this. They know it's part of their situation. Let's get everybody connected and find out what's required as soon as possible at the beginning of at the beginning of your listing. That way you've got time for your sellers to collect their documents, for your sellers to get any last bits financials or anything they may want to figure out if they want to pay it off or not. All the things that you can be putting into also your seller estimated net sheet so that they can know at this offer price, we can't pay off the solar, so we're going to have to negotiate, or at this offer price, we can pay it off. This is why we do all this legwork early on. I know things are on the market a little bit longer right now as well. Great time to keep engaged with your clients, make sure they're getting updates, and have something for them to be doing to stay involved in the transaction. We know how just sitting and waiting and nothing happening can get people bored. Keep them engaged. Get all this sorted. Let's get it done as soon as we can. Make sure you're pulling in the property profile. Talk to title. Talk to escrow. Let's get everything possible. And it all starts with when you're taking your listing and having this conversation. Now, the thing is, in the listing agreement, it actually goes into this into detail. We are supposed to get all these documents. That's including a copy of their purchase agreement for the solar if they bought it, or any of their leased documentation. They may want to pull their SDG&E bills for the past, or whichever your local electric provider is. You're going to want probably the past 12 months. A lot of times that get asked for. Do they get a power up bonus? You're going to want documentation for that. All these little nitty gritty things, thinking ahead of time what we can have ready. If there's a portal for that solar provider, what is that? How do we get that connected so we have that address ready? The buyer can start finding out if they can financially either take over the loan, take over the payments, take on the lease, whatever that specific contract and situation is. So we want to make sure we're getting all those documents and getting them right away and explaining to the seller why they're being asked for. I don't want to give up my contracts, I have solar on my house. Why would I give you my solar contract, what I paid for? You need to know what you're buying from me. You need to know what's included with the house. How does that benefit? Like, I'm part of the one where for the next 5 years, I'm one of the power farms for SDG&E and the community provider, and then I can go off grid in 5 years. What if somebody else has that you're selling? That's a huge sales point. That's a great thing to point out. And if you've got all the documents to back it up, that lets you do better negotiating on behalf of your seller. Win win. A little bit of diligence, a little bit of time on the early side. Great way to do it. So, what happens when we're writing up the offer? Well, it's time to start asking questions. Look for the panels. Do you see any panels on the property? When you're going and showing the property, do you see anything that would indicate that there could be solar? What does the MLS say? What's all the information that's provided there? Have you had a conversation with the listing agent? Because the listing agent's done their due diligence we were just talking about. Are they getting all the information they need so that they can hand that over to the buyer side, start this negotiation and purchase of the property? Have some conversations. This is not a text thing. This is get on the phone, give me some emails, get me some documents, get the nitty gritty so you can do your job and represent your client with your best fiduciary support because we know we've got information. Now everybody can make educated decisions because they have the information about it. Well, where do we find this? What we've written the contract, Sam? You're telling me about solar. What do I do? All right, we have a solar contingency. It is not specifically for solar, but it is for any leased or liened items. That's your example. It's RPA 3L8. That's a contingency time frame. If they don't have it or you don't know what's going on, you may need to extend it. You may want to have that conversation and find out, do we know how long? Maybe the listing agent found out we're good. It'll take 3 days. They may have had a conversation. We told it could take 4 weeks. Find out. Then be aware of that when you're writing your offer. When are the documents due? When do we need to get the disclosures? That should be coming over with the seller disclosures. We'll get into it here in a few pages, but solar is called out as something that has a specific disclosure that was created. We will go through it towards the end of this. It is a form that needs to be used. The contract's not enough. The assumption's not enough. We've got questions and answers we need to make sure we're getting from the seller to the buyer. That is part of the due diligence. So we want to make sure all that information's been transferred before talking about rushing, removing contingencies. And what's their time frame to respond? Are we extending that out at all? So going into the contract again, as we're talking about, this is the back behind the grid that we all have, where all the contingency timeframes are. This is explains that it is a contingency that they have the time frame to look through this. That's including can they assume the lease? Do their financials meet all of the requirements? Can they go ahead and is the hero loan going to be paid off? What are we doing here? What's getting situated? So we want to have, as we were just talking about, all those documents from the listing. You send them over with the disclosures within our time frames. Buyer's able to start reviewing. We've let escrow know before we've even opened escrow. We're going to have a solar. We can keep everything moving along. We can also loop in the lender for any documentation they may need or any proof of what's being transferred. The more we have earlier on in the transaction, the more information we can share very easily. It's known. It helps avoid a lot of the delays that I know I've run into, especially with surprises with a second solar loan when it was transferred or people not understanding, well, we're making payments or we're not making payments. I just ran into one where they swore they paid it off. Well, no, they did a lease situation where the revenue was being generated from the electricity being created from the panels, but that was a lease. They didn't own those panels. So when it was sold, the buyer had to be able to assume it, but we didn't find that all out till towards the end of the transaction. And as you know, everybody's even more stressed at that point. So it was a lot of custom delays and things to be hopeful to avoid moving forward by getting everything up front. Take a look at the contract. If you have questions, you don't understand it, call the company, get some answers, and make sure you know what you're talking about so you can negotiate from a place of power. Another part to the contract is the fact that this is under leased and liened items. So even if they own them outright, we still need to give the contract over. It's still a service provider. It's still an item that's transferring with the property. Now, if it's leased or liened, we've got a whole other situation about being able to assume the lease, to assume all the documentation, take over everything. And that's going into, is it encumbrance? Are they doing the loan? Written materials. That includes the lease, the warranty, the financing. All of that needs to be shared. I don't think we realize enough how much those are different bits that people may not have easily accessible. The earlier you can start asking for it, the earlier we can make sure everybody's aware they're going to need to provide these documents. People aren't freaked out. It's not a last minute ask when you're in the middle of trying to box up everything, to have a garage sale, figure out where they're moving. Let's ask early on when they have calm and quiet. When you're doing the listing, we can get the process started much smoother, easier transaction. So we've gone through where it is in both of the contracts. Now it's going to tell you again, what is this form? What do we have to do? So you have to use, if you have a property with any solar panels, that you are going to provide the solar disclosure. Big gripe, the solar disclosure does not work in Glide. Yeah, I know. It's got a lot of questions. It's messy. It's a pain. There are a couple floating around that are fillable. You didn't get it from me. There are different ways to do it. It's usually easiest to go ahead as soon as, if you indicate it correctly on the listing agreement, when you send that listing agreement to your TC, I can then see that you've got solar or whatever TC you work with, whoever TC I should say. And with that, then we can start the questions asking about it. Another place you'll see it is on the SPQ, because when those questions are answered, it typically will do a trigger. It should also come up in your prelim, and if you've offered the property profile, if there are any liens on the property. If there aren't any liens on the property, it won't show up. So that's why having the conversation with the listing on the RLA, and then also having it with the SPQ to make sure that we're getting those documentation and get those disclosures done as early as possible. So we've gone through both contracts. We now know that it could either be in the listing, you're going to get started over there, or when you're coming in as a buyer's agent, we're going to start asking about it and why and where it says, yes, you need to give me all these documents. So what's this great form that you want to go through with me? What is this solar form? What is this solar disclosure? Well, this was created about 2 years ago, and it's basically in response to the increasing solar being used in California on properties. Now, this will always be evolving. Right now, from what I looked at head for June for the revisions, there's nothing that should be changing on this. So we should be good till at least December unless something drastically changes in our market and in our industry. First page is informational, very similar to the agent's visual. It breaks down, kind of giving everybody the outlines of who's responsible for what. We're going to start section 1. We're talking about if you own it. What are the different things you need to do? What about the taxes? What about every little bit and piece? That was there a private loan on it? How do you own it? How is it being paid for? Or how was it paid for? Then we go into section 2, talking about, as we've talked, the liens, the power purchase agreements, the solar leases, making sure that the buyer is able to do their due diligence, find out if it is assumable, if they are able to financially assume the solar. I have had situations where a buyer completely qualified for their loan, but as soon as they had to do the solar as well, it blew them out of the water. So you're going to want to take that into account, especially if you're writing an offer with a buyer on a property with solar. Talk to the lender. Do they have enough that that's not going to push them over the edge for any of their percentages or their balances and ratios? Get everybody looped in. The more we talk about this as a team, the more we can come together to have a smoother and easier escrow. Advertising material. Just because it's in the MLS and says it's paid for doesn't mean it's paid for. We need to take a look at the contract. We need to get all the documents. Just because somebody says, yay, all the solar goes with, due diligence. That is not a disclosure. The MLS is not a disclosure. Make sure you are getting your hands on the contracts, that we are putting the buyers in touch with any transfers that are going on. Get those property profiles. Let's get some information and know what's going on. Review the prelim. Do you have questions about your prelim? That's what our title reps are for. They are here to help. None of us need to know every single thing. I don't know every single thing. I learn every time I do these videos. But we have amazing resources because that's why we have all these different team members in our escrow. We've got escrow, we've got the lender, we've got title, we've got our inspectors, we've got our brokers, we've got our managers, all of these things. You don't have to go it alone. Let's get the information, make sure you get all the info that we need to transfer over so everybody can make informed decisions. The purchase contract, it goes into the RPA. There could be issues about the transfer. There could be delays with the transfer. They might not get approved from the transfer, as we talked about. Solar evaluation. You should get the solar, just as anything else, the buyer should have everything inspected. If they choose not to have that inspected, you can use the BIW section 3, noting that they were told to do it if you have concerns or there's issues or something's disclosed as a problem type thing. Verify all with your broker of record and your file checker of what they want on file for that. But you cannot give legal advice about tax discounts because of using solar. We don't know if there's any credits. That's not our bandwidth. This is redirecting them in section 5 to make sure that buyers and sellers are aware, have talked to their legal, have talked to their escrow, excuse me, their tax people to make sure that they know what's going on and any impact it may have on their future situation. So, okay, well, that's fun, Sam. So, what about all the questions? Where do we get the info? Page 2 is broken down into 3 sections. We're going to start with this is the general questions. Everybody's always going to fill this out. So, I don't care if you own it or don't. We need to have these questions answered. If you know there's solar on the property and you're going to take a listing, it's not going to hurt to take this form with you to go ahead and start asking some questions or then helping the seller know what information that they're looking for. How old is the system? Who installed it? Who is it power for only part of the property? Maybe only did the back half. Maybe they did the pool. Maybe they did the ADU. Who knows? How big is this system? I'd have to look. I know I've got like 19 panels. How big is that? I don't know. I have to check my contract. Is it a central inverter or microinverters? Is it on the grid, off the grid? Could you go on grid, off grid? Is there a battery bank, power wall that enables to be able to run off grid? Is there any portion installed anywhere else in the roof? Do they have enough back 40 that they've got panels in the ground out there? Are they somehow on a different garage? Who knows? Where are they located? It doesn't matter. Is there any transfer fees? There may be, payments that have to come or any fee for the change of ownership. Is there a maintenance agreement? Do you have somebody who comes out and cleans your panels once a year and that's part of what you pay for and it's an assumption? And is there any other material facts? Do they know there was an issue putting them in? Were they told that there was a slippage? Who knows? This is all general information. We're going to want to make sure that every single seller who has solar on the property, leased or owned, is providing for the buyer to review. Also, remember, anytime there's a yes answer, that needs to be explained. So, approximate age. How old is it? You need to tell me down in the explanation. If there's not enough room, this will generate a TOA, or you can always do an addendum, attach a Word doc, but verify with your broker of record and file checker how they want to do that. So again, top section is always going to be general questions. Everybody's going to fill those out no matter leased or owned. Now, if we have an owned system, is there any balance due? What's the balance? What's the monthly payment? Is it secured by an interest on title? Does it have a lien? If it's not, they amend who's responsible for the balance. Is there a tune-up bill from the power company? What's that? Is there any type of other lien or encumbrance on the property or tax bill because of this? Was there anything to deal with the install that maybe you have a lien on the property? And is there a power purchase agreement? So then you would complete when we go into the lease, which is the next section. Again, anything with a yes answer, we're going to go ahead and complete. And most of this should be also provided in those contracts and leases and everything else that we've sent over for the buyer to have to review. Then the last part, is it leased? Okay, so who do we send the money to every month? How long is the agreement for? When does it expire? Does it ever expire? Is it just an ongoing, this is what we've done? What are your current payments? What's going on with that? Are they fixed? Do they vary? Is it a lease? Is it transferable? It may not be transferable. We don't know. Can it not be owned at the end of the agreement? That's the one we ran into. We thought they owned it at the end of the agreement. They didn't. They just were leasing the panels for a length of time. So double check and read through some of these with your clients. Again, if you don't know, contact the companies, find out so you know ahead of time with negotiating. We almost had a fraud issue because the seller wasn't fully properly disclosing. Luckily, it wasn't on purpose. But again, we all know when information is not conveyed correctly, that it's always in the back of people's minds, starts to cause questions. Let's get information ahead of time, make it easier on everyone, smooth it out a little bit. What's the estimated amount that will be owed when you can buy it at the end? What's going on? So all these little bits and things we're going to want to do. So if you can take this form with you, when you're taking a listing or get it signed as soon as possible because you've indicated on the listing there is solar, we can start getting this information so that when you're negotiating as an agent, you have the information because it does impact and it's going to change numbers. It also lets the buyer have information that they're going to need to talk through with running their numbers with their lender and making sure this is something they can assume, take over, as well as with their payments, taxes, insurance, all the fun stuff that comes with homeownership, as we all know about. So that's a pretty quick overview, but it's the main places where you need to be looking for information about solar. The SPQ will say if there's any leased or liened items, that's a good trigger, but really you need the solar disclosure. And it does need to be provided within the time frame on the RPA, along with all the other seller disclosures. Now, coming up, we're going to wrap up the month with my usual what went wrong in April, and I've got some doozies to share. It's been fun, per usual. We will start May off with the calendar and the contract. There is a built-in set of time frames, and I understand that escrow, title, lender, everybody wants things at different time frames. We have a calendar in the contract. Do you know how to find it? Do you know how to use it? And do you know what extends it? We're going to talk about that a bit. I have Bob Ledoux of Coastal Mortgage and Cabrillo Mortgage coming to talk on the 14th about what's the difference between a pre-qual, a pre-approval, and a DU, and which ones are the sellers entitled to. What should be provided with the offer? What's going to help you with a stronger offer? On the 21st, I'm going to go through some real basics with DocuSign, but I think they're going to be life changing for a lot of people. Where to find stuff, where to not go. Well, you didn't, this, I didn't. It's super easy. We're going to totally walk through DocuSign and I'll have it all set up for that. And then, yet again, the end of the month recap that I always do what went wrong. Well, that should say May, but obviously April. Someday I'm going to learn how to do a Zoom presentation. Probably not today, but someday I will. Thank you as always for joining me and being here on my Wednesdays to update you and share with you a little bit about the different things I see coming up on files. Please like, subscribe, follow. I hope you've signed up for the Zooms. If not, send me a message and I'm happy to set you up with the Zoom invites. This was Why with One Stop. I'm Sam Hayes. We're talking about solar, where to find it in the RLA, the RPA, and which solar form to use. Feel free to call me with any questions, even if I'm not the TC on the file. I like to talk about the stuff till I'm blue in the face. Always verify everything with the broker of record of the file you're working on. I will see you next Wednesday so we can recap April and just kind of go over the doozies of what happened, how we fixed it, and so we can avoid the speed bumps moving forward. I hope you have a great day and appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.